Hey, this is Nate with Zbroz, and today we're going to talk a little bit about springs and spring design and what we do here at Zbroz for our spring kits, as well as the springs that we use on our in-house line of exit shocks. So the springs that we utilize come from several different vendors and suppliers that we worked with for 15 plus years on most of them. We utilize a high tensile wire, so it's the top of the line wire. It's going to have the best memory and the best consistency, and we actually have them built to our spec, so we call out the diameters, the lengths, the rates, and even have them build us some fancy progressive tenders that are very popular on some of our kits for the front shocks. And that's a progressively round weight rate, so it's going to have a different rate initially and then a stiffer rate later on. You can usually tell a progressive spring because of the winding of the coils gets tighter, so that they stack up and become stiffer. We utilize that same technology in our spring kits, so it's a high tensile wire, so that's top of the line that you can get in the industry, and allows you to have a lightweight spring in a sense, but also to get an accurate rate. Something that a lot of people don't realize when it comes to spring rates is if you have a given spring, so let's say this is a 250 pound spring. So the way a spring works is you actually would have to take the gap out of any of the coil windings here at the end of the coil. So usually you would compress the spring, say 1/8 of an inch or so, and then you would have to compress the spring a full inch before you would reach that 250 pound rate. And then the spring's only going to output an additional 250 pounds for every inch that it's compressed. And that's the way a standard straight rate, linear spring works, is for every inch of travel, it's going to output whatever the rate of the spring is. So this is like a 14-inch 400, so it's got 14 inches of length, and for every inch that you compress it, it's going to put out 400 pounds of force. So, and then in a progressive spring application, we're able to play with and dial in what kind of rate of progression we want. So rather than only outputting, say, 250 pounds or 400 pounds for every inch, this can put out much, much more. So we have some that are, in the 1,200, even 1,600 pounds of actual force. So they might not have as much travel, but we're utilizing the travel in a dual rate combination with a crossover in the spring kit. So we're picking where we want to get rid of the tender spring with our crossover point. So that's just a little bit of food for thought when it comes to spring rates and kind of how to understand some of that terminology that goes around the industry. So check out our spring kits. They're all tuned based on the machine and also the type of terrain and riding that you're in, and for that additional weight, because we know the majority of the users in the UTV world don't run a car completely stock. Usually when they roll off the showroom floor from the dealer, they have windows and winches and cages and roofs and boxes and spare tires, so hundreds of pounds of extra weight, and the factory does not tune the car for that. So that's where spring kit from Zbroz is really important, because it gets your ride height back up to where it needs to be so that the car handles better and gives you a much better ride and more ground clearance. So check us out at zbrozracing.com.